Hey everybody, welcome to the newest episode of The Bearded Gamer Show. Now as always, I'm your host, The Bearded Gamer. Oh yeah, looking nice and awesome today. Chris Arnone. Alright, let's get straight into that good news, bad news. So first up, little piece of good news. It should be pretty obvious at this point. The Steam Summer Sale is still going on all the way through July 22nd. So go buy some cheap PC games. It's awesome. Every year, I've bought some stuff. I'm sure you've bought some stuff. We've all bought some stuff. It's good times every summer. Some kind of bad news. Now, EA was recently talking about Dead Space 3. And I've talked a little bit about Dead Space 3's co-op that they showed at E3 and how it kind of looks like somebody got Gears of War all over my Dead Space. And I really love Dead Space. Well, the reason they put this co-op in there is because apparently they had people complaining that Dead Space was too scary. Seriously? Go play a different game. It's called Dead Space, for God's sakes. It's supposed to be scary. But at the same time, I dialed back because, you know, I'm always about more people playing great games. And Dead Space, the franchise, they're great games. And so if it's too scary for you, for one, that's weird. Why are you playing it? But okay, get a friend and you can be less scared because you're going through it together. Fine. It's not going to affect my single-player experience. They did come out and say that, so I go, whew. But anyway, yeah, so if you're too scared of Dead Space, try Uncharted or Gears of War. There's plenty of good third-person shooter action out there that's not scary. Some just good news. Now, this is a double shot of good news for Borderlands 2, which, you know, I love Borderlands. So looking forward to Borderlands 2. First up, the Borderlands 2 campaign, they're saying it's clocking in right around 50 hours. Now, that's huge for sort of a shooter RPG dungeon crawler kind of game. That's a lot longer than the original Borderlands was, in fact. I think I was sitting around, you know, what, about 30 hours, a little over that, to beat the original campaign for Borderlands. So 50 hours, talk about, you know, bang for your buck. So much to do in that game, clocking at 50 hours. And of course, that's just the first time through. Nobody beats Borderlands only once. Now, the other piece of really cool news, Borderlands 2 is done. Gearbox is done working on it. Right now, they're already starting to build their DLC out. Which, you know, I know there's some people that say, well, if they have time to build, it should just go on there. But keep in mind, after they're done with the code for a game, they have to ship that away. It has to go, well, first it's probably got to go through some quality testing, more quality testing. Then it's got to go off to be printed on the discs, and they've got to have time to get sort of the PR machine rolling to make sure it sells enough copies. Plus, their DLC has been awesome. I mean, the original Borderlands, Microsoft came out and said that the Borderlands DLC has the highest attachment rate of any DLC this generation. So it just shows that Gearbox makes really quality, valuable add-ons for their games. It's good stuff. Some bad news, however. Okay, now we're going to file this under Iwata says more stupid crap. Okay. Now, Iwata, of course, is the head of Nintendo. Now, first off, he's talking about the Wii U, and he said, and I quote, "Being first in the next generation race is not important at all." Really? Somebody should really tell Sony that, because they've been trying to play catch-up ever since they launched the PS3 because they weren't first in this generation. And it was really funny, because some of the articles I was reading were saying, well, they're already going to be first. Are they really? Is the Wii U really the first console of the next generation? Because it keeps feeling to me like a really late entry into this generation. And, you know, we've had some sort of debate about it. It's more powerful, it's less powerful than the 360 and the PS3. And I guarantee it's going to take a lot of horsepower to run that tablet controller, too, and to, you know, feed all of that into that tablet and on top of, you know, your television and everything. So don't know about that it's not important at all. Another quote from him in the same interview, he said, "We have not changed our strategy. In other words, we just do not care what kind of more beef console Microsoft and Sony might produce in 2013. Our focus is on how we make our new console different than the others." Right. And now let's keep in mind that recently the PC has been gobbling up more and more market share of the gaming industry. The console has been dialing back. It's been taking more of a place as, you know, sort of an entertainment hub in the living room than as an actual gaming machine. The PC has just been gobbling it up. Wonder why that is. Maybe because it's sitting somewhere around 10 times more powerful than a console right now. So you can't go and say that horsepower doesn't make a difference. You know, you're launching a console now, you know, this year, and then maybe next year we're going to see new consoles come out from Sony and Microsoft that are just going to leapfrog the crap out of your little white box and go, yeah, okay, you got the tablet and you still are the king of motion control and all that, but really? I mean, how are you going to compete on the hardcore level? You know, okay, so the next Call of Duty comes out, and there's a next generation of consoles out. Guess what? You're going to be in the exact same position, where the Wii U version is not going to be the same one that's on those new consoles. It's going to be just like PS3 360 and the Wii. You get this dumbed-down, ported-out version that's lower res. I just see this whole thing repeating itself all over again. Of course, if it does, Nintendo's still going to come out squeaky clean, and they're going to sell, you know, bajillions of the freaking console. So we'll just have to see how that shakes down. But I don't see Iwata's logic in this. The one thing I did see him say that was good out of this whole interview is that they're going to focus on pricing. Obviously, they learned from the Nintendo 3DS debacle. Just way overpriced it, and it didn't sell well. They had to drop the price, and now it's really, really healthy. So they're really focusing on that price from the get-go with the Wii U. Okay, that does it for the news. I know that was kind of a controller confessional in itself, but now we're going to go on to a real sleep-depraved controller confessional. All right, so last night I went and saw the Dark Knight trilogy, okay? All three of Christopher Nolan's Batman films, okay? Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and the midnight showing of Dark Knight Rises. Now, I do want to take a moment and give my deepest sympathies and condolences to the families of the shooting that happened in Colorado. You know, it's so much, you know, I focus on nerd journalism, but the real tragedies like that just have to overshadow completely anything that we're talking about. Now, I'm not a full-scale journalist. I'm not here to report about that or any of the details of that, but I just want to pause for a moment, express my sympathies to the families of those victims in that shooting. Now, moving on. What I wanted to do was sort of a top 10 list related to Batman, but I am such a crazy, huge Batman fanatic that I was really struggling to come up with one. And my girlfriend came up with a weird idea, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to run with this. So this top 10 list is brought to you by Christina's Conservatory of Voice. If you're in the Kansas City area and looking to get some awesome vocal lessons from a woman with a master's degree in vocal performance and opera, shoot me a message, all right? I'll hook you up. She's amazing. Okay, moving on. This is a top 10 list of Batman top 10 lists. Okay, now here's how this is going to work. I've got an idea. 10 ideas for top 10 lists, and you're going to let me know which one you actually want me to research and create, okay? Now, the top vote getter, next week, I'll do the actual top 10 list, research this one, flesh it out from a true Batman fan. Not just the movies, but the comics too, all right? So here we go. Now, these are just in the order I thought of them. There's no prioritization here. It's just I wrote them as I thought of them. So, number 1, the top 10 Alfredisms. Okay, so different, words of wisdom or nuggets of funny that Alfred Pennyworth has shot out over the years. Number 2, top 10 Batman gadgets. 3, top 10 Batman vehicles. The top 10 Batman villains we want to see in movies. Now, this can either be ones that were really bad before or have just never showed up in movies. We want to see one of those. The top 10 Batman babes. All right, that's a good one. I like that. Top 10 Batman stories. The top 10 at goddamn Batman tweets. If you're not following it, you should be. It's hilarious. The top 10 Batman artists. The top 10 Batman knockoffs. And finally, the top 10 Batman badass moments. So pick one of those, throw it down in the comments, let me know which one you want to see me fully research, flesh out, and give to you next week. And I'll do it. It'll be awesome. It'll be good times. Okay, that does it for this sort of mini controller confessional. Finish up with some more Batman-style Nerd TV. All right, guys, finish up with Nerd TV. What do you think I'm going to give you? Obviously, The Dark Knight Rises bearded and sleep-depraved review, okay? Now, I was up till like 4 in the morning watching this movie, getting home, and had to get up at 5:30 a.m. to go to work. Whew! So, what little energy I have left in the day is coming at you right now. Okay, so I'm going to break this down piece by piece. First up is the acting. I'm giving this an A-. Now, to me, there were no lemons this time around. You know, the character of Rachel, I mean, Katie Holmes, seriously, that was just, whew, don't know what was going on with that. Maggie Gyllenhaal was a step up, but, still not the greatest. Well, the ones they brought in now with, Anne Hathaway, Selena Kyle, Tom Hardy was phenomenal as Bane. Even with, so much of his face covered, he still conveyed such emotion and presence, and freaking huge. It was crazy. So just fantastic acting job by the whole cast. Action. I'm going to give this one like a B+. Now, having watched the entire trilogy all in one go, I have to say, the fighting sequences in Batman Begins are the best. A lot of the sort of explodey, actiony stuff, yeah, I think, Dark Knight Rises may have actually topped the other two. But, it sort of falls, it was very good, but I've seen better action in movies, to be honest. So, giving that a B+. The gadgets. I mean, it's Batman, right? He's got to have all kinds of crazy gadgets, and honestly, this one let me down a little bit. We had a lot of sort of brand new gadgets creating the whole persona in Batman Begins, a lot of innovations in Dark Knight, and this time was not so much. It was much more about sort of the characters and the whole, philosophical fall and rise, hence Dark Knight Rises. So it was much less about the gadgets and the gimmickry as it was about the character growth, which I like, but got to knock the gadget score a little bit. Character. Well, I was just talking about this now, wasn't I? Now, the only one that fell a little flat for me was Selena Kyle, Catwoman. They never actually call her Catwoman, by the way, but that is Anne Hathaway's character. And I felt like she did a good job. They just didn't give her enough time on screen to really grow. We didn't get much of a backstory. We know there is a backstory, but we don't get really filled in very much, so it's hard to get a resolution and a bead on her specifically. But Bane was fantastic. Batman, this great sort of rise and fall thing was fantastic as well. Jim Gordon, wow. And there's a few others. I don't want to give away any spoilers in this review, but just to say there are a couple of others. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, I don't want to get into too much detail, but that was a great, great arc. In fact, I'm pretty sure he had more lines than anybody else in the movie. But he did a fantastic job. So I'm giving this one a B+. And finally, the story. There's the rub, right? Where do I rank the story? Now, for me, The Dark Knight is my favorite movie of all time. The Heath Ledger stuff, that was sad and it was tragic, but it had no bearing on the movie for me. Now, I'm a huge Batman fan, and so I'm a huge Joker fan. You have to understand that character, and he had such an understanding of that character and how that character works that it was just phenomenal. Did it measure up to that? Not quite, but I think it was better than Batman Begins, which I also think is a pretty great movie. So overall, out of that ranking, I'm giving it a B+. Now, some other things I don't just, give sort of a grade to. First off is there are some nice nods to some older classic Batman stories, such as Nightfall and No Man's Land. They took some very obvious cues from those great Batman stories in the comics and sort of translated that, along with a lot of other stuff, into this movie. And I also really enjoyed having seen the entire trilogy together. It really does tie together as a trilogy. It holds up as one cohesive piece, and I thought that was just excellent, excellent. So my overall score is an A-. I like it better than Batman Begins, but it still doesn't quite, surmount the pinnacle of filmmaking. To me, that is The Dark Knight. Now be sure, Saturday, 11 a.m. Central Time, I'm going to do a live stream. I'm going to pre-record some Batman Arkham City footage, and Matt Ashbaugh and I, Matt of Steel, who I do a lot of my live streaming Dota 2 stuff with, who is also a mega comic book nerd, we're going to talk Dark Knight Rises, and in fact, Nolan's entire Dark Knight trilogy. Talk Batman, talk about how good the movie was, and how the whole thing holds up. And of course, talk a little bit about that Arkham City gameplay. Just downloaded that new Harley's Revenge DLC, so I'm going to get a little bit of that playtime in so you guys can check that out. 11 a.m. over on Twitch TV in Central Time. Please watch. It'll be good times. All right, that does it for this Controller Confessional. Or sorry, this is Nerd TV, isn't it? All right, so that does it for this Nerd TV and this video. We'll check you guys later.